Jabber. I'm sitting here with the author of 11 New York Times bestsellers. Most notable among them are Liar's Poker, Moneyball, and The Blind Side. His latest, Flash Boys, uncovers some of the unsightly ways that the stock market actually works. Very happy to be joined by Michael Lewis. Michael, thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
Read the book, and I'm going to be completely honest with you, love the book. Sections, and I mentioned this to you before, there are sections that I didn't understand what I was reading. I
worry.
I'm terribly wired. I'm terribly wired for finance. The world of financial transactions, especially when we're parsing it down to milliseconds on computers, sometimes escapes me, but it was still a fascinating ride.
So parts of it were, I think, the most complicated things I had to ever write. And the reason I had to explain them is that Wall Street has made itself so complicated intentionally, so you do not understand it, because your understanding is something that can be, your misunderstanding is something that can be exploited. To me, there was like this technical detail that I had to bring across to the reader just to satisfy people who had that degree of curiosity.
Yep.
But there was really a pretty simple story, and the simple story was, guy who works on Wall Street, who's a trader, runs the trading desk at the Royal Bank of Canada, discovers around 2008 that there's some predator out there who knows what he wants to do in the market before he does it, and is sort of exploiting him. And he discovers that it isn't just him, and that sort of anybody who's an investor is on the receiving end of this predatory activity. He figures out what they're doing, explains it, goes and explains it to other people who are prey, and then he goes out to try to destroy the predator. So it's one part like detective story, figuring out what happened, and one part kind of revenge story. Let's get the bad guys.
It's got a slight elements of like the Untouchables. Let's get a ragtag group of people together to fight the bad guys.
Yeah, I was thinking of the Dirty Dozen.
Right.
Yeah, or actually what I was thinking.
I think everyone gets killed in the Dirty Dozen.
I think this one isn't over yet.
Yeah.
Everyone may get killed in this one,
yeah, you got to be careful.
Yeah. So it was interesting. So this guy, named Brad Katsuyama, he's Canadian. One of the things that is curious about this ragtag group of people is almost none of them are American. They're all mostly immigrants.
Yeah.
And most of them had some idea about how this society was supposed to work, and it was supposed to be fair in certain ways. And they were, for whatever reason, slower to buy into the idea that just because you work in the financial sector, you have to sort of behave the way a lot of people who work in the financial sector behave. They saw this thing that was clearly not good. They set about trying to fix it rather than exploit it. I mean, and to me, what interested me in telling the story was almost just that. It was like, why do some people, if you see a big oil pipe carrying oil from one side of the country to the other, and someone comes and whacks a hole in it and makes a fortune out of the oil coming out of the hole, and a whole like ecosystem grows up around this pilfered oil, why does somebody walk into that situation and say, let's fix the hole in the pipe, as
rather
opposed
than just
to
get out their own
go and take some oil? And then, so that's what happened effectively. A pipe got busted in the financials, in the stock market. An ecosystem grew up around it to exploit the busted pipe. It was without anybody making the slightest effort to fix the pipe. In fact, all the effort in the financial system was to preserve the size of the hole, maybe increase the size of the hole.
And I just want to be to clarify, what's fascinating in this book is, which I did not know, is that people were exploiting the speed at which trades were made electronically.
Right. So, should I say it, because you might confuse people?
Yes. That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me.
No,
suddenly I became a grandfather who's not allowed to drive the car. And you take it, Michael.
Yes,
I can't anymore.
Go ahead. I'll probably confuse people too, because it is a little confusing. There are 13 stock exchanges now in this country, not just one, not just the New York Stock Exchange. So you might buy or sell like AT&T on 13 different places. And these stock exchanges now sell to insiders, to high-frequency traders, the right to put their computer right next to the exchange and get information about what's happening on the exchange before everybody else. So they know when prices move before everybody else. So it's sort of like some people have a few millisecond advantage in finding out what prices are.
Right.
Those same people go to the brokers that you give your stock market order to, whether it's E-Trade or Ameritrade, one of the online people, or whether it's JP Morgan or Merrill Lynch or whoever. And they buy the right to trade against your trade, your slow-moving trade.
Yep.
So they may know the stock's gone down or up. They will know if it's moved at all, and you don't, and they have the right to trade against you. So it's a constant opportunity to exploit the slowness with which you're getting information. Or another way to look at it is it's a constant opportunity to exploit the informational value of what you're trying to do. And this is what happened to this guy, the main guy, the hero of the book. He was a Wall Street guy. I mean, he was trading hundreds of millions of dollars of stock, but he would go to his trading screens would say, there are 20,000 shares of Microsoft available at $20 a share. And he'd say, okay, I want to buy them. He'd hit his button. And one day he hits his button, and all of a sudden, the minute he tries to buy them, they go away, and the stock goes up. And it's because the traders could see what he wanted to do, and they did it in front of him. So it's like this built-in, it's so I don't know, it's not sinister, it's sort of like persistent about the problem, is that it's this built-in skim of pennies on every transaction. So you don't really feel it. I mean, you lost a penny. Who cares? You lost a penny. But when you add it up over the whole market, it's billions and billions a year of basically grift. And nobody says anything. I mean, it's just obviously wrong. It's obviously the only point of this skim is to benefit the guys who happen to be inside the exchanges and the financial sector as a whole at the expense of the broader economy. And you would think that someone would say, really, this shouldn't be going on. I mean, you would think that. And it took these guys. I thought, so what interested me was...
And what's interesting is they're not... there's an Irish immigrant, there's a Canadian. It did take people from... Outside, which makes you, when you read the book, question, are we not teaching ethics in this country anymore? Are other countries, or are there other systems where people might be more inclined to feel ethically than they would if you...
This is a really great question. I think it's a really great question, because I think what's happened is the people who are sitting in the middle of this system and making money from it, they're the brightest graduates of the best schools in the country, who've basically taken in the idea that if you make a lot of money, you're a success. And it's not that what they're doing is illegal. I don't think anybody actually broke any laws. They took advantage of a mistake in the system, a glitch in the system, rather than fix the system. The success, the feelings of success that came with the making of the money completely overwhelmed the sense that, wow, this is actually not good what's going on. And it's like a basic moral sense is numbed in a lot of people, and I think that this is true when you become part of systems. I mean, it's the culture of Wall Street. And this guy, Brad Katsuyama, who sort of leads this charge, I mean, he gets moved from Canada to the United States, and the more he's exposed to the American way of finance, the more insane he becomes. I mean, the more upset he becomes. He has almost a physiological reaction to it. His blood pressure starts going up. He can't sleep at night, and so on and so forth. It violated his moral sense, what was going on.
Right.
And it's odd, that makes it all sound very pious and humorless and all the rest. It's not that he is a pious person. Not at all. It's like a regular guy, kind of a good guy. He didn't care enough about the money to violate his own moral sense to get it. And so I do think it's a question worth asking. It's like, why aren't more people who are big successes on Wall Street more concerned with just making it work well for everybody, as opposed to just get dollars?
And this goes to a bigger theme that you write about, which is access to information. That we think of ourselves in America as having this democratic, fair system, or trying to be fair, as fair as possible. We like to think that our markets are fair. We like to think that it's the land of opportunity, that if you have a talent, you can rise to the top. And what's becoming increasingly clear, and what you've written about in your books, is that people with access to some information have an advantage. And the technology now exists where certain people can have access to certain information, and it gives them a big advantage over other people.
It's not a fair market. That's exactly right. It is. I think if you read the story, it's hard to conclude anything but the market is rigged. It's rigged in a way that investors can still make money in the market and so on and so forth. But there are players in the marketplace who have such a systematic advantage that they'll go 1,000 days of trading stocks without ever losing money because it's just they have.
Right.
It's a totally the advantage comes from basically where you sit in the world. And if you happen to sit on the inside of the financial system, you have this advantage. And that's probably always been true. I mean, I'm sure it's always been true that the people who are inside the financial system have an advantage over everybody else, and the game is to get there. But but it is a little. I think it is a little metaphor for the culture that it's sort of like all dollars in the marketplace don't stand the same chance. That some people's dollars have advantages, unfair advantages over other people's dollars.
Well, probably the biggest issue in the country right now. That's a pretty heavy statement, but yeah, I will say that one of the biggest issues is income inequality, disappearing middle class. We have this layer of incredibly wealthy people, a smaller middle class that's shrinking, and then we have a lot of people that have inadequate incomes. And then the question is, why is this broadening? Why is this getting bigger? Why is this income inequality seem to be growing and growing and growing?
It's obviously a complicated question.
Yes,
right?
yeah.
So let's just accept it's a complicated question. It has
Yes.
to do with globalization of markets,
Right,
probably. Right. But given that there are these trends that, and you can feel it, right? You can feel like the gaps between rich and everybody else just feel they feel like they're growing, and you don't even need the statistics to see. You see it in life. Some people fly on jets, and some people don't fly.
Right.
But given that this is happening, it seems insane to me that we allow the financial sector, which is
supposed to be pure. At least it's supposed to. You would think, in theory. It's supposed to
be the stock market. It's like the
it's
most
supposed to be a
regulated,
yeah.
democratized financial market in the world. It's supposed to be a level playing field. It seems crazy that you structure these markets to make the rich richer at everybody else's expense. When I was explaining, like my kids ask me, they're vaguely interested in whatever book I'm writing, not terribly, but sometimes they'll say, like, "What's the book about?" And I said, "Well, it's actually a very weird story." I said, these guys on Wall Street who are really rich have figured out how to take pennies away from everybody else who aren't very rich, and it adds up to billions of dollars. And they say, rich people steal money from other people? I said, well, stealing is not exactly what's going on, but it's pretty close. They go, that's awful. It is awful. And some guy saw it was awful, and he came in and he decided to take it back.
Right.
And they say it's Robin Hood. And that is basically the story. It's the story of Robin Hood. But it does seem crazy that as a matter of public policy, we do not try to cut off these gambits by the well-to-do insiders to take advantage of people who are not.
Right.
Because there are all these other forces at work that are already widening gaps. I mean, why like have a market that's contributing to this?
You know, it's